Good evening, team. It's time for another video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about a subject that comes up a lot, and that is making Gil. Now, one interesting thing is every time I go to make a video, it seems like it's either nighttime or crappy weather in the game, and today we've got both. It's raining, thunderstorming, and nighttime, so I thought I would show off my Eldthirst from Eureka. His name is Eldhurst. He's Eldhurst the Eldthirst. But anyway, today's video is going to be the most ambitious yet. Not only have I thought through a lot of the strategies I've used to make Gil, but I've also created, wait for it, a PowerPoint for you to enjoy while I go through this. So I'm going to go ahead and switch away from the game here a minute and get my face out of the way of the PowerPoint. And this guide hopefully will help you in making Gil in Final Fantasy 14. And the number one rule, the first thing I want to start with, is know what's going on in the game. There's really nothing more important than knowing the current state of affairs and what people are buying. So know what's going on, number one. For example, right now there's the Ishgard restoration. What this means is that people are scrambling to collect the scripts for the rewards in the restoration, and they're also using it as a really easy way to level crafters. In fact, I've leveled a culinarian from roughly 33 to level cap 80, and I've leveled a carpenter from basically 0 through level 80 just using the Ishgard restoration. So if you haven't been taking advantage of that, please do so. But anyway, what this means is that there's a need for the items that can be gathered for the recipes for the scripts and all of the gear that crafters need as they level up. So Ishgard restoration is a big one right now. 5.1 housing. So when 5.11 released, we got the extra housing districts, and what that meant was a lot of free companies moved their houses into the new districts to upgrade, and it opened up the floodgates regarding housing. So housing items became very popular because suddenly there were a lot of people who didn't have a house before that now do. There's also the addition of the new raids like Alexander Ultimate, and that usually means that people need food for those raids, potions for those raids, things like that. So there is not a better tip that I can give for making Gil than just simply knowing what's going on in the game. I'll give you another example. So right before Shadowbringers launched, a lot of people were rushing through Eureka to get their gear leveled up, to get their relic, that type of thing. And during that time, logograms were extremely profitable. In fact, I can tell you the only reason I have a medium house at this point in the game is because of logograms. Eureka's seeing a bit of a resurgence. I haven't checked to see if logograms are still profitable, but wow, I made just millions and millions off collecting and also buying and reselling logograms. So number one, without a doubt, to make Gil, know what's going on in the game, and the rest of the items I'll talk about today will support that. Number two, server hopping. If you've watched any of my other videos, you've seen I made a whole video on this specifically, and it is a great way for any job any class, any level to make Gil. You do have to have money to make money. You have to be able to buy things to resell, and that can be a little bit risky because of market fluctuations on the board. You could go and buy something and go to resell it, and the market price could drop. So that brings me to the second tip here. If you do server hopping to buy and resell, please be patient. May not sell in a day, may not sell in a week. I got impatient with an ancient elm and followed the prices as they went down on the market board. I stood to make at least 1 million Gil off this, and I watched the prices just start to drop, and I decided to follow the market price drops, and before I knew it, I had only made back my money. I made 0 profit on that investment. And then a week later, I looked at ancient elms and they were selling again back at that higher price. So be patient, please, and know your limit. Know what you are willing to risk from this, and know how low you are willing to take that price and stick to it. So server hopping is definitely a way to make some Gil. Number 3, quest turn-ins, levy quests, crafter and gatherer quests. Know what the turn-ins are for these and either craft them, gather them, buy them, resell them. These are great options for making some Gil on the side, especially in times like this where people are leveling up their crafters and gatherers. I bought almost every single one of my quest turn-ins to get my culinarian and my carpenter to level 80, and that made someone else who had crafted those things a decent amount of Gil. Now, I made sure I went around to different servers and looked for the best price, but still, someone made money off me wanting to level my crafters and gatherers and not wanting to have to go through the process of finding all the materials and crafting those things myself. Now, I do have a way to where you can do this and break even, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, anyway, it's a great way to make Gil, is to know what people need. Just go to any website. In fact, I'll show you one. Let me see if I can get to this here real quick. Here we go. So I am on the consolegameswiki.com for Final Fantasy 14, and this is a list of all the carpenter main quests and all of the items needed. So you can use this in a couple different ways. One, you can know what to make or what to craft or what to try and buy and resell that people are going to need as they progress through their gatherer main story scenarios in order to level up. You also can use this as a shopping list, which is what I did. I simply took this list, I had it up, and I went around to the various markets and I found a cobalt halberd to buy and a jade crook and a yew longbow, and it made it really easy as I was leveling up just to simply turn in the item, finish the quest, and move on. So a couple different tips, a couple different things you can do just simply by going to a site and looking this up. Back to the PowerPoint here, and that's about it for quest turn-ins. Next one, know when to hold and when to fold regarding price reductions. It can be very, you can be motivated highly to go in and when as soon as you see someone drop a price, to drop lower, and then they drop lower, and then you drop lower, and then they drop lower, and you drop lower, and before you know it, you're making not near as much Gil as you could have. A couple of things here. One, again, know what you're willing to sell something for and stick to that. Two, a trick that I found, that since you can't, communicate with other people on the market board. I think that's a reason why it shows the retainer's name. You can't necessarily do corporate espionage or whatever, insider trading, so to speak. But what you can do is, instead of always trying to drop below the lowest price, just match the lowest price. And what I found is about a quarter or third of the time, people will realize what you're doing and they'll stick with you, and a bottom line price will form and people won't undercut you. If it's an item that moves relatively quickly, at the end of the day, it's not going to matter if one or two sell for a much cheaper price than what you've got. The other side of this is, you may be in a situation where your retainers are full of a bunch of inexpensive things that you didn't spend Gil or spend a lot of time on. And that may be an instance where you do want to go in and just clear house, put things on super sale, undercut people like crazy, and just move your inventory. So know when to hold and when to fold. Next, make, gather, or buy extra. So I led to this a little bit earlier when I was talking about buying items for my crafter quests. And what I did is, instead of just going to another server or crafting one or getting the materials and only making one, I would buy or make extra. And this is one of the best things you can do to make Gil. I know this may seem like common sense, but I don't think people always consider it every time. If you're gathering something for a Ishgard restoration project, grab a few extra stacks and sell them. If you're buying a halberd for your carpenter quest and you're buying it from the market board on another server, buy an extra one or two and resell them. This is a major way that I've been able to keep parity, to keep even with my Gil, is I try to pay for what I've paid for. Meaning, I try to get a double out of whatever I'm making or buying, enough to where I've basically recuperated the cost for what I've bought or the Gil I've spent. Next, balance volume and high dollar. I know it's super exciting to sell things that are in the millions of Gil. I know it's really cool to see that little message pop up on your screen that says, hey, your retainer just sold something for $500,000. But often these things take longer to sell. They are more competitive because everyone's trying to do this. So you want to have a good balance of those high dollar, exciting things and some low dollar, high volume things. I'll give you an example. I went to the market board and I noticed that there was an opportunity for some Glade pillars, housing items, to be sold on the market board. Really cheap, really easy for me to make now that I've leveled up my carpenter, and I was able to go in a matter of 5 minutes make like 10 of them, and they'll each net me 45,000 Gil a piece. Now, I know that's not a ton, I know that's not super exciting, but if you add all that up, 450,000 Gil, it's not a bad profit, and it's good to have a really good mix of high dollar and low dollar items for sale. So definitely have multiple irons in the fire. Next, retainers cost $2 a month per retainer to have additional. If you can, I currently pay for one extra retainer. I'm considering going to 2. Not everyone can do this or wants to do this because it costs real people money. It costs real world Gil. But if you can, have more retainers. It just gives you more capability to sell things if you have more space and more of a storefront, so to speak, out on the market board. Study your market board. Often people go in and they'll hit the little sort option in the upper right and sort by demand and just look at what's there in demand. You don't necessarily want to do just that. And I'm going to show you quickly why this is. So let me go back to the game here, and I'm going to go ahead and turn a couple things back on. There's me again. Hi. I'm going to go ahead and head to my house and go to the market board. All right. Now, and actually, let me do this real quick. I'm going to go to System Configuration, UI 150%. All right, that should be a little easier to see. So if I go, for example, to seafood, and up in the right-hand corner here, I can sort by demand. And according to this terrible sorting, the most demand thing is Titanic sawfish. Titanic sawfish is somewhat hard to catch. It's the window isn't very long, but it's not too bad. And you can see the exciting thing is, wow, these fish are selling for over 300,000 gil a piece, and the demand is 2. But if I go to the history, I'll see the last one didn't sell for 3 days ago. There was one a couple days before that. There was one a couple days before that. So even though this thing says that these are the most highly sought after high demand items, you can see 1119, 1119. A few days ago, there's been only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these that have sold in the past month. So on demand is not always the best way to go. What you want to know or want to do is go back to rule number 1, which is to know what is selling and what's going on in the game. So for example, if I type in squid and I go to spearhead squid, these are selling for only about a 1,200, 1,400 gil a piece. But if you look, quite a few have sold within the past few days, and definitely within the past few days this whole list is full, and people are buying, you know, 1 or 2, a few decent stacks here or there. But this may be a better one to go after because it's the turnover is higher. You're not going to make as much, but again, this kind of goes back to having high dollar items and low dollar items. Why is this selling good right now? Well, it's because it creates the squid ink that people use to make the latest food that came out in 5.1 to help with rating, things like that. So just again, start with the on demand, start with what is selling well according to that list, but also I would consider rule number 1 top priority, which is knowing what is going on in your game. And let's go back to the PowerPoint here. Turn me back off. Back to death by PowerPoint. So again, study your market board, look by demand, but don't just stop there. Next is desynthesis. So if you haven't heard, there's no more cap on how high you can make desynthesis. Desynthesis also now does not fail. So what that means is you're going to successfully desynthesize every time. The only benefit that you get from having a higher desynthesis rating is you are more likely to get rare items, collectibles, things like this. I've made some videos regarding fishing and some different items like the assassin fry minion that you can go after using desynthesis. But this one I feel like people don't take advantage of very often. So it's kind of a niche market that isn't too tough to get into because not a lot of people are doing it. It's not very competitive. This one, I'm sorry, it's super boring, not as glamorous as a lot of the other ones, but simply saving money is the same as making money. So a penny saved is a penny earned, right? How do you save money in the game? Well, one is taxes. I talked about this in another video. If you are standing in Limsa Laminza and you're buying something that's 200,000 gil and the taxes on that are like 10,000 gil or whatever, and the person selling it, their retainers in the Crystarium, and it's going to cost you 1,000 gil to go to the Crystarium, take the 2 seconds, teleport over there, and save yourself that gil. You literally just sold something for 9,000 gil when you saved that money. So instead of just clicking on it and buying it, not worrying about the taxes are bad. Let's try to avoid them. And also another one that people don't consider is how often they teleport. Those fees, especially if you're going between Shadowbringers and Realm Reborn and all the different areas, they can add up quick. You can teleport yourself 100,000 gil worth before you know it. Often you can find and come across different free teleportation scripts, or the ones that lower the cost of teleportation from your grand company. There's a lot of different ways to reduce or eliminate those teleportation fees, so don't be afraid to take advantage of that too. And the last one, and this is probably the most important, or one of the most important as far as saving money, other than probably server hopping to look for things, which is look your items up online first. And the reason you want to do that is there are a lot of people who buy things off the market board for significantly higher prices that you can buy from a vendor because they just don't take the time to look. Housing items are huge for this. This is also a way you can make money. I've made probably 1 million gil since I've been playing the game by buying housing items from the housing vendor, putting them up on the market board for more money, and people don't look up the item to see that you can buy it from a vendor, and something, a chair or whatever you can get for 2,000 gil from the housing vendor, they're buying for 10,000 gil on the market board. A lot of other YouTubers have shared this, just simply buying stuff from vendors and reselling it on the market board. So one, you can do that to make money, but two, don't be the one who buys something for 5 or 10 times as much because you just didn't check to see if someone else sold it first. All right, next, do the math. You don't always want to get necessarily the cheapest stack. Again, this one is not glamorous. It's kind of boring. I've pulled out my calculator multiple times while playing the game. If I'm buying something to craft or I'm buying gathering items or whatever, it's not always the best to buy the cheapest stack because you may be buying significantly more than you need, and you may be buying something where there just isn't that resale value. So take a look, see if there are some that are stacks that are closer to the number that you need, even if they're a little bit more. I've ran into this where my inventory is just full of extra junk I didn't need, and it took forever to sell it because I was just always buying that cheapest stack. So do the math. Don't be afraid to be a dork and pull out a calculator and figure out what you need. It's another way to save money. All right, fill in the gaps in the market. What is in demand but has few for sale? There is nothing more exciting than going to the market board, putting something up for sale, and realizing you are the only one selling it at that time. You own the market, you own the price. Now make sure you're somewhat fair with how you price when this happens. But for example, when 5.11 came out and there was new aquarium fish, I caught a bunch of them right away. It was like the first thing I did. So again, goes back to rule number 1, know what's going on in the game. but I caught a bunch of them first thing. I was the only one selling them, and they were selling for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of gil a piece because I was the only one on the market board. It only lasted a few days, but wow, was that cool. Yesterday, I mentioned that I made some glade pillars because there were none on the market board. So right now I am the only one, and I just checked a few minutes before making this video, I'm the only one selling those pillars on the market board. So I stand to make a decent amount of gil because they're cheap to make. So I'm actually more excited about the glade pillars than the things I have that are more gil on the market board because I found a gap in the market. So find those gaps, look for what's in demand, but has few for sale. All right, so what does this get you? What do following these rules get you? And what about me? If you looked at my screen and I go back to this, I'm going to click off here, click back on here. If you look down in the right, you'll notice right now I only have 10 million gil. So you're like, why are you telling me how to make gil in this game? Well, in about 6 months of playing this game, I've bought a medium house, the one behind me there at the top of the hill. I've fully furnished it. I, within the past few weeks, have leveled up the culinarian and the carpenter to 80. I've paid for all that gear. I've got all the gear for all the gatherers. So I've found parity. I've sent my wife like 6 or 8 million gil. I sent her brother 1 million gil. So I've spent a lot of money. And what's nice is I've always kept it parity. And what I mean by that is I had about 30 something million when I bought this medium house and put the plot on and everything. I was down to 10 million. And since then I've gotten all those things done and I'm still at 10 million. So following these tips will help you not only make gil, but kind of keep that parity where you've always got a decent amount of money and you never get down in the range of 1 million or 2 gil because you've always got enough irons in the fire. So I know that probably wasn't the most exciting video you've ever seen. The other thing I fully understand is that none of these are get rich quick at all. You know, I'm not telling you necessarily a specific item to chase or something to go after, but the reason for that is the best way to make gil in this game is to ebb and flow with what's going on. Again, going back to rule number 1, having an idea of what's going on in the game and using what you have, the resources you have, to make money off of it. So hopefully some of the tips were helpful. If they were, please let me know. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, team.